Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not some farcical aquatic ceremony. I mean, if I went around saying I was an emperor just because some moistened bint lobbed a scimitar at me, they'd put me away. But if we're being honest, of all the moistened bints who have ever lobbed a scimitar in my general direction, the Fay Enchantress is absolutely near the top of that list, and that's because she's very good in Total War Warhammer 2. Now, as a cavalry guy, I have not played that much Bretonnia recently, but I decided to change that today. I played a bunch of quick battle, a bunch of match-made games with Bretonnia, and it has felt really damn good. And that's because I absolutely adore heavy cavalry, and there are a few factions in the game that can output the kind of DPS with the thunderous cavalry charges that the Bretonians can put out. Grail Knights are amazing, and one of the best things about them is that they nullify one of the most difficult things that a lot of factions bring to the table, which is physical resistance. You think about a lot of the units that are brought commonly in the multiplayer meta, and units that are basically doing exceptionally well in a lot of multiplayer games. Think about Dragon Princes, you think about Sisters of Slaughter, you think about Doomfire Warlocks, those kind of things, they all have substantial physical resistance. And when Grail Knights get their hands on them, and when the Knights of the Lionhearted, the Knights of the Realm, Regiment of Renown, get their hands on them, goodbye to that physical resistance, goodbye to that tankiness, and say hello to a flaming lance that is going to send you into the great beyond. And that is what Bretonnian cavalry can do for you. So, I've been talking about it recently, the High Elves in particular. They have a fantastic cavalry component. I know that some people, I've seen some comments say like Dragon Princes are underperforming or whatever. That is absolutely false. I 100% disagree with that. They're amazing. Dragon Princes are amazing. But in this matchup in particular, they are not. It is not a very good idea to bring them, and that is because Grail Knights will run them into the ground. Fay Enchantress is a great legendary lord to bring alongside the Bretonians because, especially if you're going cavalry heavy, because Lore of Life synergizes so well with what Grail Knights and Knights of the Lionhearted bring to the table. You want to keep them in the fight. Earthblood and Regrowth will definitely do that for you. So, let's take a look at the High Elf build here. What is he bringing to the table? Well, there are 3 Phoenix Guard, and this makes a lot of sense, right? Think about what they bring to the table. They're going to be able to hold the line very well. They do have charge defense against large. They have martial mastery, and they have the damage output to absolutely butcher cavalry if you can pin them down. He also has a lot of High Elf Spearmen, which will trade very cost efficiently with a lot of the Bretonnian main line, and also have that bonus for large, so they'll do okay against cavalry, although not amazing, especially if that cav is getting healed up. And then some Silver Helms out on the flank. So he is elected to forgo the Dragon Princes, and that is absolutely the right call, because when you have a 1400 gold cavalry unit, you really don't want to be sending that into Bretonnian cav, because you're going to lose them, and it's going to be a big waste. So Silver Helms have the mobility to tie stuff down and fight for a decent amount of time so that the Phoenix Guard can catch up and basically just use those in tandem. So he's going to want to be very defensive with his cavalry. If he gets too aggressive, he can get punished pretty heavily. And then White Lions of Crace will, they're not the best unit ever, but they will certainly do well against Foot Squires or against most of the Bretonnian main line. They may not absolutely smash them into oblivion, but I'm pretty sure that they would be able to beat Foot Squires in a head-to-head fight. I'm not actually 100% sure about that. I've never tested it. But let's press play and see what we're working with here. So, my build, I have the Companions of Cunel. Some of my French pronunciations are not going to be very good, so just bear with me there. And we have the 2 Foot Squires here just to give a little bit more punch in the main line, and some Beast Slayers of Baston. So this is a Regiment of Renown. Really ugly color scheme. The red and yellow does not look particularly good, but they do have the AP and the bonus versus large, and they can help support the cavalry fight or do decently in a melee grind as well. So I'm sending my cavalry out to the flank here. Grail Knights and Knights of the Realm will be looking to find some squishy backline targets if I can, but there are no archers on the field for either side, which is interesting. And I think that honestly, going archer heavy or even bringing a couple archers against Bretonnia can be a little bit risky, especially if they decide to go so cav heavy, because protecting it against 5 cavalry units that are very fast and can easily kind of squeegee their way through your line and get into your back, that can be a bit problematic. So he's decided not to bring archers. It's not that they're bad, it's just they can be a little bit hard to protect against them. And I saw that these White Lions of Crace were moving up, so that's looking like a very juicy target for my Companions of Cunel, and I want to get a charge into them if I possibly can. And we're going to shoot up right up the center and pull away, because Phoenix Guard and Spearmen are closing it down, and I don't want to stick around for too long. We do have the Fae out on the flank, looking awesome, and she does not have her Chalice of Potions, so there won't be any Common of Castatoras in this game. Honestly, I don't think that it would be that good against the High Elves because they're not really just like a massively infantry mass faction. Better against some of the Horde factions, I would think. But we've gotten a really good engagement off against these Silver Helms here. We've got a little bit out of position. Quickly slam them from behind. Silver Helms are pretty much gone off the charge there. He's going to overlap with some more cav, but we've got Grail Knights coming in as well. Now, he's going to very wisely decide to get the hell away from that engagement because Silver Helms in a 1v1 against Grails will be absolutely disastrous for the High Elves. But what that is going to do is allow me an opportunity to get a glorious hammer and anvil off while the Fay comes in to reinforce as well. And meanwhile, I'm still putting pressure on his left flank with the Knights of Lionhearted and thinking about taking an infantry engagement. But honestly, when you're in a situation like this, a lot of the time I feel like the best thing to do is, I'm not 100% sure that how the infantry fight will go, right? But I'm very confident in how my cavalry fight will progress. So what I could do, and what I'm going to do, is avoid the infantry fight for a bit. Might tie up these Phoenix Guard with the peasants, but not commit everything. Wait till I've won the cavalry engagement, and then once I have my cavalry free, then I can swoop in and begin that infantry fight where I can get the hammer and anvils off. There's a Flock of Doom going down on my Grail Knights. I'm going to get a glorious hammer and anvil into the back of these Silver Helms, and very nicely, he will do the same thing and reinforce, get a nice rear charge into my own Grail Knights. Thankfully, we have the Lore of Life, which means Fay will be casting some regrowth, and that will keep the Grail Knights in a really good position, give them even more physical resistance, give them a lot of healing, and that will allow them to tank this engagement while Teclis comes in and tries to take on the Fay. And now that we've gotten rid of a lot of those Silver Helms, just pull out and rethink what's going on there. So Phoenix Guard in the center will, of course, absolutely butcher my peasant mob. These guys are just shitty little peasants. They're going to get absolutely pooped on, and they're going to run for the hills. But that's okay. I mean, they cost 100 gold. Like, who cares? Their only job is to tie stuff down. And look at what has opened up here. White Lions completely unsupported in the center because the Silver Helms will pull away. That allows my companions of Kunel to absolutely butcher them. And off the charge, I mean, it's not going to be incredible. They only have a 41 charge bonus, but wait about 5-10 more seconds, and these White Lions are going to have a miserable, miserable time. We're going to butcher them with our two-handed swords, and that should be a really good engagement because I nullified their charge bonus, and Foot Squires are coming in to reinforce as well. Now, the Fay Enchantress is out of position. I did miss micro her there. Then of Ammontot going down on my Grails will keep them from getting any rear charges off. Meanwhile, my right flank has not committed to the fight quite yet. The Foot Squire is still waiting in support, and we can get a nice charge into the back there. It's another Flock of Doom on top of the Grails, and the Fay is in a really bad position. So I mismicroed her as I was moving my cavalry. The net of Ammontot kind of screwed me up there. And as the Fay kind of casts some magic here, tries to get out of here, you can hear the command moves are trying desperately to get her out of these bonus versus large armor-piercing units. There's only one thing left to do, and I do have a Dwellers Below. And take a look at this. Now, I did not mean for this to happen. Obviously, I wasn't trying to suicide my Fay. But when Phoenix Guard completely surround a single entity like her, they're going to get very bunched up, and that will allow a beautiful, beautiful Dwellers Below to erupt from the ground. And this is going to be brutal. They had 7,200 HP at the start of the spell, and that will drop massively as these angry tendrils rise up from the desert sands and absolutely butcher these Phoenix Guard. Now, Fay is having a very bad time as well, but with the rear charge from the Grails and another beautiful charge from the Knights of Lionhearted, I have never seen an infantry unit die that fast. And look at the Phoenix Guard just go down. Now, one thing I haven't talked about, we're getting way too blobbed up here. Honestly, a Chain Lightning or something could absolutely punish this really heavily, so this is actually a bad move for me. I didn't need to send the companions in as well. The 2 cav units was more than enough to finish off these Phoenix Guard. But one of the important synergies between Knights of Lionhearted and Grail Knights against Phoenix Guard is, of course, they also have that physical resistance, I believe 20%. So you bypass that as well. They're halberd infantry, sure. You don't really want to stick around in like a frontal engagement with them, but if you get rear charges off with Bretonnia Cav, the Phoenix Guard are going to melt too. So yeah, you saw them just absolutely blow up there. That was very nice, and now we can just kind of phase out of the fight now. We can use the Lore of Life to get her back into the important engagements, get her healed up, and then pull all our cavalry out of there. Meanwhile, the infantry engagement has begun, and I brought a lot of really cheap, cost-effective stuff that's obviously not very good in a one-on-one fight, but their only job is just to tie stuff down and allow my cavalry to get those glorious hammer and anvils off that Bretonnia is so well known for. So we're finishing off these Silver Helms here, and then we can push down and get beautiful charges into the back of all these High Elf infantry. So meanwhile, there are some Azure Spearmen out on the flank there. There will be a fiery convocation ripping through the flank, and that will do some damage, but it's a lot better against infantry, obviously. Now foot squires, men-at-arms getting into the back, and some really glorious charges into the rear. And this is what Bretonnia offers, man. This is why they're so much fun. And why, honestly, the Regiments of Renown that came with the Bretonnian, or with the 30th Anniversary Regiments of Renown are just so good for Bretonnia, because they offer a lot of tools that they didn't really have before. More options, more cavalry at different price points that really perform very well. Knights of the Lionhearted and the Companions are both very good examples of that. They just perform very well for their cost. And getting Hammer and Anvils into the back of Phoenix Guard, I mean, they're great halberd infantry, but they're just not going to have a very good time when you have that many cavalry units getting into the back here. So White Lions are going to get flattened as we continue to move our cavalry, and there is a full strength unit of Phoenix Guard right there. But we're just going to keep our cavalry moving, keep them hammer and anviling, and pretty soon this will be disastrous for the High Elves. Although there's going to be a very nice chain lightning ripping through the Bretonnian main line. That'll do some damage for sure. Foot squires and men-at-arms dying in droves there. Glorious spell. It's great to see some of those vortexes get used, because in Total War Warhammer 1, pretty much never happened. They've gotten buffed pretty nicely. Teclis in a pretty bad position, surrounded by very good cav. And we are going to finish this off here as we move fast forward. We're going to get a Flock of Doom on some of our cav, pull away, and then go for those final killing blows. Now, we are going to show another battle in this video, because I want to show different ways of, well, it's going to be the same build, but different ways of playing, and so what some people have been doing to try to counter Bretonnian cavalry. And I want to talk about the basic macro play and micro that's been going on with Bretonnia in general, why I think they're a good faction, why they're so much better than they were pre-patch. But best thing to do right now is just watch some glorious cavalry get some hammer and anvils off. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to fast forward, and then we will strike that killing blow with the Grails into the back of the Phoenix Guard. Knights of the Realm coming in as well, joining in the party. And that'll be fun. So, I really like Fay for multiple reasons in this matchup. Not just against the High Elves, but if I'm bringing a cavalry-heavy army in general. One reason is favor of the Fay. You look at that plus 44 melee attack. One of the best ways to buff up good cavalry is just give them high melee attack. Give them a really high chance to hit their attacks. And you can get Grail Knights and Knights of the Realm up to around 82 melee attack, which is just absolutely absurd. You combine that with their high charge bonus. I think Grail Knights have 80 charge. Let's take a look. 78 charge. I mean, yeah, it's just absolutely brutal. You can see it here. Even though I think he brought like a pretty decent army against Bretonnia, it's just not going to work out very well. And you guys saw a very similar one, actually, in Turin's and Italian Spartacus's early access to the Queen and the Crone tournament. You saw that even if you bring a lot of Phoenix Guard and a lot of bonus with large units, if you keep your cavalry moving, you keep them supported by Lore of Life, and get some really good hammer and anvils off, then even Phoenix Guard are not going to have a very good time, because that physical resistance is completely nullified by the elite tier cavalry of Bretonnia. So take a look at the stats here. I mean, Grail Knights 140, 151, fun stuff right there. Companions of Cunel. The great thing about them, what I like doing with them, is I'll keep them as support for my back line. So if anything manages to squeegee its way through and get into my rear, I can use them to tie them down. But more than anything, people usually don't put spears all the way in the front line for their infantry. So a lot of the time there will be a swordsman, or a White Lion, for example, like happened this game, that won't have anything in the front to absorb the charge. And then you can kind of, as you have your Grail Knights and your Knights of the Realm out on the flank, you can just send your companions right up the center. Questing Knights with their high armor piercing will butcher most heavy infantry in the game if they get a good charge bonus off, and then just get a cycle off 1 or 2 times. Or even better, you can have a cheap peasant block the charge of an enemy like Swordmaster or something like that, and then send companions right up to reinforce, and they won't get hit by the charge bonus of the enemy infantry, and you'll absolutely slaughter them. So I like doing that. It works out very well in this game. They destroyed those White Lions and then got into the rear, and Foot Squires did very well as well. So we're going to go into a different game here against the Tomb Kings, and I will talk to you about those army compositions as soon as we get into the battle itself. Now, if you're talking Monty Python, I cannot think of a more Monty Python-esque unit in the entire game than the Grail Reliquary, which is honestly a really good pick in a lot of matchups, and
I brought it in the High Elf game last time, in case anything with Terror or leadership debuff comes in. But honestly, just for that plus 10 leadership, it's very good, and it only costs 500 gold, and it's pretty hard to kill too. But especially against the Tomb Kings, that immunity to psychology is really important, because their whole line causes fear and terror. So this in the center of your line, giving your entire army leadership, your infantry obviously is not amazing, so giving them anything that will keep them in the fight that much longer is a really big deal. So if we take a look at what the Tomb Kings are rocking with right now, Queen Khalida is on top of a chariot, which is not what you see every day. Usually you'll see her with her Necro Serpent, but chariot, not a bad idea. I mean, it's a little bit weird against Bretonnia because they have so much cav, bonus versus large cav, but the chariot can definitely destroy a lot of these infantry units and just cause a lot of havoc in the back lines. A bunch of spearmen, King Nakesh's Scorpion Legion, Skeleton Warriors, and Tomb Guard with halberds out on the flanks, and a lot of Necropolis Knights with halberds. Now, this is a unit that I absolutely adore the aesthetic of, and I think they can be utilized pretty efficiently. They can definitely be good. They are expensive though, and they are a little bit fragile, which is weird because you think about it, they have more HP than Grails, about 100 more HP actually. They have very good stats. They actually have higher melee defense than Grail Knights as well, but they don't have healing unless you bring a Necro Attack, which is not something that I typically see very often in multiplayer, and they seem to just kind of melt off the charge. So the Necropolis Knights with halberds aren't a unit you want to just send in unsupported. You aren't supposed to use them like a traditional cavalry unit because they will get beaten up off the charge by a lot of different units in the game. You want to use them more as a backliner to use that high mass they have now to prevent monsters from kind of running roughshod in your back lines, and they are monster hunters. I mean, they will absolutely butcher something like a mammoth or something like that if they can get their hands on them. But this guy is actually using them out on the flanks, and looks like he's going to be trying to do some flanking as well. So let's take a look at how this is all going to go down. We do have Khalida moving up right now. There is a lore of Light Lich Priest and a decent front line that should honestly be able to beat my Bretonnian infantry. Queen Khalida shooting right up the center, and we'll run over some men-at-arms, but we have a little secret for these Necropolis Knights with halberds. Out on this flank, I had two of my cavalry units completely hidden, and we're just going to charge directly into them. They aren't even going to get their charge bonus off. They were not expecting that ambush, and that's brutal. This is about as bad an engagement as can possibly be. I mean, they're going to do a lot of damage to both Knights of the Realm and Grail Knights if they get their charge bonus off, but he missed it completely because he wasn't expecting that ambush, and these Necropolis Knights are going to get slaughtered by our bonus versus large and our magical attack. So they're going to try to escape, and it's not going to work. And then out on this flank, I'm going to use that ambush to give me more time to just kind of scoot around the flank here and hopefully put some pressure in the back. But in the meantime, all this infantry has engaged. Skeleton Spearmen up the center, King Nakesh's Scorpion Legion going in there as well. And right here is what I was talking about. So men-at-arms, very cheap, very cost-efficient infantry, not very good, but they can hold the line a little bit, especially by that Grail Reliquary. And then just send in the Companions of Quenelle right behind their AP, support them that way. We can absolutely butcher right here, cut right through, and then get into the back and get some hammer and anvils off. Now he's investing a lot to shutting down my cavalry out on this flank, and it makes sense because he can't afford to have this cav get over there. He is going to have a Barona's Time Warp go down because he expected to catch me with the poison there, but we were able to pull away. And what he wanted to do was cast a net of Ammontalk, and he's just now going to get in there in time and get a net of Ammontalk off. And that could be a really bad engagement for me if he's able to get a rear charge in. But we have Grail Knights out on this flank as well. And so as he goes in for the rear charge, which is a really good move here, I'm actually going to completely prevent these big Cobra statues from getting in there doing what they do. And Grail Knights come in from the flank, and that'll be a beautiful engagement for me. Again, nullifying the charge bonus of these Necropolis Knights with halberds, and they're going to die really fast. We're going to support them with some Overcast Earthblood and Favor of the Fay. And again, these Necropolis Knights, who are not really supported that well by anything but Skeleton Spearmen, who are going to get there way too late, they're going to go down. And that's going to be another really good engagement for us. So he does have one more unit here, but we have our cav in the back now. We can completely ignore these Skeleton Spearmen, and the mainline infantry engagement going pretty well. Khalida getting a very nice Venom Staff into the middle of my companions and my men-at-arms. Getting some kills there for sure, up to 34 now, as our Beast Slayers up Bastogne hold the line against the Tomb Guard with halberds. And they should be able to do relatively well in that fight. I don't know if they'll win, but they'll trade decently. And now Necropolis Knights coming in for that charge, and this is a very good engagement for him for sure.
into the back of my companions, and that's going to be bad for me. But, again, we can reinforce with our Grail Knights who have free reign in the back here. Nice rear charge, and we can finish them off very nicely as our cavalry comes in. And look at this, man. This is what Bretonnia is all about. Glorious Knights of the Lion-Hearted charge into the back of the Tomb Guard. Fay Enchantress leading the way. We'll get a good look at her. Covered in her own blood, I guess, because we're definitely not making any blood fountain out of our Tomb Guard enemies. And Tomb Kings are definitely on the back foot. So, pretty much right off the start of that battle, things were looking pretty bad for them. Not because of army composition, but because of the way he was utilizing his Necropolis Knights with halberds. I think he expected to just be able to stomp cavalry engagement with support from the Skeleton Spearmen and the Tomb Guard with halberds, and he wasn't really able to do so because of how we executed the ambush right here, and how we kind of got out of his net of Ammontok attack right there. So that was fun. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty satisfying. I absolutely love playing Bretonnia with these hammer and anvils. They're just a blast. Bring a lot of heavy cav. Bring a decent, maybe not a sturdy front line, but a lot of cheap, cost-effective infantry, and just use them to tie down everything. Support them with the Grail Reliquary, and then come in from the rear. So if I was playing Tomb Kings, how would I have changed things? Honestly, I think that Ushabti with Great Bows are a really, really nice tool against Bretonnian cavalry if you support them well, if you protect them. And they can definitely support their Ushabti with Great Bows very nicely. I mean, you think about stuff like Necrosphinxes, you think about their Tomb Guard with halberds, they can definitely do that. Now, one thing that you've seen me play against Bretonnia before as the Tomb Kings is go for a very shoot-heavy army. So Khalida, definitely a good choice against Bretonnia, I think, whether you put her on a Necroserpent or a Chariot or on foot. Doesn't really matter. You really want to bring her for her Blessing of Asaph. And then you get a Bone Giant or two, which I think are actually pretty good in that matchup. And then maybe one or two Ushabti with Great Bows, and you have a really potent shooting force that can wreck cavalry. And the cool thing about Bone Giants is they will actually force enemy cavalry to group up around them, which makes them a lot more susceptible to shooting from other units and more susceptible to just getting tied down or getting blasted apart by spells. So I think that Tomb Kings actually match up pretty decently against Bretonnia, and these units in and of themselves, like Necropolis Knights are a good unit with halberds. They're good against Bretonnia, but you can't be so aggressive with them. They can't be operating out on the flank without support. You can't let them get charged. Basically, they're the back liner that lets like a Skeleton Spearman take the charge first, or a Skeleton Swordsman, whatever. And then you swoop in, use that poison to prevent them from escaping, and that bonus for large and AP will absolutely chunk through any cav or large you get your hands on. So I've been having a really good time with Bretonnia. I played 4 quick battles today. They were all kind of like that, like a little bit stompy, so I tried to go for faction matchups that I hadn't played a lot with yet, that I hadn't seen on YouTube a lot. So I think the Tomb Kings versus Bretonnia matchup and the Bretonnia versus High Elves matchup are both very interesting. I do think that Bretonnia has the advantage against the High Elves, as good as they are, simply because Grail Knights nullify so much of their physical resistance and the things that make them so good. If you can't bring Dragon Princes, it can be a little bit problematic as the High Elves, because you don't have that mobility and the cavalry advantage out on the flanks. And it's one of the few matchups where they don't have a pretty substantial cav advantage, I think. So hope you guys enjoyed those games with Fay Enchantress and Bretonnia, and I'll see you all in the next video. Any Pride, signing out for now.